celebrating the mega milestone of 25 million learners. Thank you for making Oliveboard India's most trusted government exam preparation platform.
Celebrate this milestone with the biggest sale of the year.
Get 55% off on all plans. Don't miss out. Join the 25 million celebration on Oliveboard today.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining in. I know you must be excited about the webinar and what we can unpack over the next 30, 40 minutes on how you can plan the next 3 months in order to be fully prepared for this year's exam and what you can do in these 90 days. So our endeavor would be to give you that snapshot of how you can complete the syllabus during these 3 months. What is it that you need to be mindful of? What are the trends we've seen in the previous years that you can take learnings from? How can that help you in this year's preparation? And of course, what the experience of the mentorship program itself has been, how have students benefited from it, and how can you make the most of it, right? So let's get started. Before I begin, a hygiene announcement, please keep your microphones muted. If you have questions, please drop it on the chat box. We'll pick it up towards the end of it. So let's get started. Next slide, please. Yeah, what we're going to cover today is on how do you look at both phase 1 and phase 2 together and not necessarily look at phase 2 only after completion of phase 1, or even what could be more risky is after phase 1 results are out, how should you look at general awareness, not just for phase 1, but for phase 2, for interview, because that pervades all the stages of the examination. How should we look at ESI and FNM? What should be your study plan? What are the other things that you can do in order to improve your preparation, get better confidence? And of course, we'll wrap up with any Q&A you have. The most important is what are the giveaways for today's webinar, and we've got very interesting ones and useful ones. So please stay tuned for the end of the webinar for us to announce the giveaways and for you to again make the most of it. Right? Next slide, please. Okay, so here is where we stand today, right? From the time notification is released, you have roughly 2 months. So we are expecting notification sometime in the next month, which means that phase 1 could be in August, phase 2 would be in September. Usually there's a gap of about 4 to 6 weeks between phase 1 and phase 2, which means you have very little time between phase 1 and phase 2 to start reading afresh or even learning new concepts. For revision, for practice, yes, which is why what we are trying to do is help you prepare for phase 2 before phase 1 itself. So you don't get into that mode of panic and you try to cover too much in a short span, and that usually is not desirable, right? Finally, interview is going to be again about 2 months after phase 2. So let's look at the pattern. Anyone who's not aware of this, please take a keen look at it. You have 4 sections, general awareness being the highest with 80 marks, and you have 25 minutes. So this is a recent trend that we observed over the last 3 years, where the RBI's fixed time limits for each section, right? And you will see that correspondingly when we look at cutoffs, how that has changed. But general awareness, English, and quantitative aptitude all have 25 minutes with varying number of questions or marks. After general awareness, it's reasoning, which has the second highest weightage, 60 marks and duration of 45 minutes. Both English and quantitative aptitude have 30 marks and have 25 minutes. So look at it in this frame that when you have 4 sections, for the purpose of qualification for phase 2, there are 2 criteria that have been set out by the RBI, which is A, you need to meet the overall cutoff. B, you also need to meet the sectional cutoffs, which are going to be a maximum of 25%. So in this case, as you are going down the table, it's going to be 15, 20, 7.5, and 7.5, right? So for phase 1, this should be our focus. Now, how do I get to both the sectional cutoffs and the overall cutoff. Please remember, we'll talk about it when we show the trends, but overall cutoff in phase 1 could be 1.5 to 2 times of the sectional cutoffs. So both need to go hand in hand. We need to maximize our score, but we also need to ensure that no single section leaves us vulnerable where we are at the risk of qualification by performing poorly in that. Next slide, please. Let's look at phase 2. Now, phase 2 is the determining factor in your selection in the overall process, because phase 1 score does not get counted in the final selection. It's only phase 2 and interview. Plus, because this is for 300 marks, as you can see on the rightmost column, having 3 papers, ESI, English, and Finance and Management. This accords the highest weightage. Not just that, once we look at how the split of phase 2 and interview marks have been, or what the final cutoff has been, you will notice that having a good score in phase 2 will ensure that even if the interview marks are below the average, right? Let's assume and you had an off day, or for some reason you don't fare that well in the interview, you can still see your name reflected in the final selection. So phase 2 is critical, which means I'm repeating myself. Again, do not assume that after phase 1, you will start with phase 2 preparation. This is something that should happen simultaneously along with phase 1 preparation. And before you attempt your phase 1 examination, you should be thorough with phase 2 as well, right? But broadly, you will see that 100 marks in both ESI and FNM is split into objective and descriptive types. Both of 50 marks each. You have 30 questions, which again mean 20 questions of 2 marks each, and 10 questions of 1 mark each. And 4 questions in the descriptive, where 2 questions of 10 marks and 2 questions of 15 marks, right? You also have English descriptive, which is 400 marks. You have an essay, you have précis writing, and you have reading comprehension, right? This is an area that, again, I've seen students neglect to their own detriment. So please see that you do not ignore this, and you have sufficient practice in order to meet the requirements of the examination, right? Next slide, please. Okay, so I think we've spoken enough about this, but you can see that in 2024, there was about 40-day gap between phase 1 and phase 2, and this was perhaps the longest gap we've seen in last 5-6 years, right? So now you can't keep counting on the RBI providing enough buffer between phase 1 and phase 2 for you to be acquainted with the syllabus, for you to revise all of these things. So we'll have to complete phase 2 preparation before phase 1. Right? Next slide, please. Right. So now I've also seen a couple of questions on the chat box on how should a working professional manage, how should a student manage, all of these things. So we'll cover that during the course of the webinar, and we'll take a few towards the end. So the first is when we talk about balance, try to do both during the day, which means that, okay, let's take an example of a working professional. Let's assume you are going to spend anywhere between 10 to 12 hours on at your workplace or on work, even if it's a remote setup, and on commute. Right. So in this scenario, make sure you get 3 hours during the day, preferably about 1 or 2 hours before you begin work, and again, the remainder during the end of the day, right? So the way to split it will be that at the beginning of the day, let's assume you're doing phase 1 and you're practicing quant or you're practicing reasoning. End of the day, then shift to phase 2, where you're doing whether it's ESI, FNM, something like that, right? Things that will happen throughout, or you need to get absolutely thorough with or not be lax about, is current affairs, which will go on starting today, if you have not started, until end of phase 2, right? Please remember that. Here again, to help you with both efficiency, right, in terms of how much time you spend, and also in terms of giving you the relevant material. Oliveboard has daily lectures, and you can get the daily PDF on current affairs. We'll discuss this in detail when we talk about general awareness, but please remember that because the syllabus is vast and there are multiple sources, You may drown in ton of information and not remember enough during the exam. So how do we get out of this trap is something that we'll discuss subsequently. But as a prescription for your preparation, as far as possible, maintain only single source, right? And Oliveboard will do the job, whether it's in terms of the video lectures, the live classes, the material that you can read for static portion as well as for the dynamic portion. Next slide, please. Okay. As and when you complete any topic, make sure you take tests, which are again divided into full length mock tests, you have sectional tests, you have topical tests. In fact, what you should do is go in the reverse order, right? As and when you complete a topic, take the topical test. As and when you complete a section or you're fairly confident that you have finished, let's assume 50% of those right topics in that section, then take the sectional test. But given that we are fairly advanced in this year's cycle, you should start taking full length mock tests no later than a month from now. And that is assuming that you're starting your preparation today, right? Next slide, please. So Oliveboard portal has all the resources available for you to enhance your preparation, for you to gauge where you stand, for you to look at what modifications you need to do in order to succeed. So again, like I described, you have topical tests, you have full length mock tests, you have free mocks as well. So make sure you attempt them and you also understand what is working for you, what is not working, and how do we fix things that are not working. Right. Next slide, please. Right. So before we get into what's actually presented on this slide, let's look at how your preparation should be strategized, right? See number of questions related to that. So one thing is now, irrespective of whether you're a student, whether you're a working professional, whether this is your first attempt, whether this is your second, third attempt, please look at what the examiner intends to gauge from any aspirant in this exam, right? One, this is a general recruitment, which means they expect you to have a fair bit of awareness about various topics on economy, on social issues, and have a critical mind that can gauge what is the problem. How do we look at what solutions have been attempted? To what extent have they been successful? And what remedies can you suggest in order to improve the outcomes of things that are already in place? This is especially true in the welfare schemes, right? Now, all these have good intentions, right? But the implementation is perhaps where it lacks the necessary teeth in order to be successful. So what would your prescription be? Where have you seen a model, even if it's of small scale work, that can be implemented or that can be attempted to be made more widespread and result in improvement in overall effectiveness, right? And these are largely common themes in education, in livelihood, in skill set, in health, in women and child development, in environment, right? These are recurring themes. So this really does not require specific knowledge or anything special that Oliveboard or anyone else would provide. A general understanding of what whether it's the union government, whether it's the state governments, whether it's the private sector, anyone who's contributed or who's attempted to solve this, what have they done? What do they need to do better is something that you should have a sharp view on, right? So think of it as an exam where it's a question of your aptitude, your ability to grasp things, and able to take that general problem into specific recommendations and use that as a launch pad for now changing the outcomes of, as I said, whether it's a scheme, whether it's a guideline, any of the things that both the RBI as a regulator, the government, and various ministries in their duties perform, right? So general recruitment, breadth, over depth is what the exam intends to gauge. How should we prepare? Now, over the course of, even as we speak, the whole cycle is going to take at least 7 months. What can you do in order to improve your chances of succeeding, right? You're going to be reading a lot during these 7 months, right? At least 3-4 hours, as we discussed earlier, right? So in this case, you should be very thorough in what you read, which means you should understand well. You should also remember well where facts and figures matter, right? So 3 key elements of your preparation should be: A, there should be a time for study, right? Which is because you're going to be reading a lot of stuff, both old and new, right? And it really does not matter what you've done before this, whether you've come from a management background, whether you come from an engineering background, whether you come from a commerce background, you're already working in a bank. Everybody has certain set of knowledge and skills that are relevant for the exam and things that they have to now pick up, right? So please do not come with an inhibition that somebody who's come from a specific background already has an advantage and you don't have that, or not that complacency that if you come from a certain right, again, place of work or place of education, it means you have a head start. The head start may be there in terms of knowledge, but when it comes to the exam, how questions are asked, how you need to respond, that largely goes away, right? So you can use that, but please be humble enough to accept that the way you need to prepare for this exam is going to be different, right? So what are the 3 key things? 1, there should be time for study. 2, there should be time for revision, right? Because you're going to study a lot. You're going to read about a lot of stuff, especially a lot of stuff that is new, right? Even if you have a theoretical foundation, given that you are going to be reading current affairs every day, that is something that you still need to revise, right? For current affairs, please make a revision schedule on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, which means that everything you read today, you will revise tomorrow. Everything you read from, let's say, Monday to Saturday, you will revise on a Sunday. Everything that you read during the first 4 weeks, you will revise on the 29th and 30th of the month, right? This is non-negotiable. This is something that you should do starting today until, as I said, end of phase 2, right? The third is, which is also rather more important than 1 and 2, is practice. Understanding where we stand, understanding how much of syllabus have we covered, how much of it we really know, how much of it we remember, all of these things. So mock tests also become critical, right? So have the same approach that once you complete a topic, you will take the test related to that topic, right? So if we want to break down that 90-day window that we have, and I see a couple of questions also in terms of notification. Look, this is a speculation game. We are not in the game of speculation. Based on trends, we can estimate that the notification is going to come out in a certain time frame. But there could be multiple other factors that influence and that can change the window in which the notification will come out. But sitting today, what we have visibility on is that we have roughly 90 days. Take another 20 days here or so, depending on when the notifications are. What you should keep in mind is, what can I do in these 90 days, right? Rather than looking at when is the notification, when is phase 1 going to be. Once the notification is out, anyway, you'll have dates for phase 1 and phase 2, right? So coming back to this, I hope I've answered that question. Coming back to this, now, the first thing you should do is understand the syllabus. And RBI has a detailed syllabus on this, right, for phase 1. Look at all the topics that are mentioned in the 4 areas. General awareness, as I said, don't treat it only as something which is only relevant for phase 1. It covers both phase 1 and phase 2, especially in ESI and finance. So make sure you keep doing that. Quant, reasoning, and English does not require additional preparation, in the sense that these are things that we've already studied in school sometime, but it might have been a decade, it might have been 15 years. So what we should do is revise the concepts well, right? I'm preempting some questions that may come up in the chat box in terms of how should I look for speed? I'm usually slow at it, right? Again, simple prescription is do not try to optimize for speed, focus on accuracy. As long as you're able to answer questions accurately and you pick the right questions to answer, you are going to sail through, right? Usually where we get stuck is not because we take more time to multiply, divide, or any of the mathematical operations. It's because for us to convert that English sentence into a mathematical equation takes time, right? So let's work on that. Okay. Something that can help you both again for phase 1 and phase 2, but more for phase 2 is looking at the topics that appear in the newspaper, not those that necessarily make the headlines, but where there is analysis of the issue. So every newspaper has an opinion and editorial page somewhere in the center. So you can subscribe to an online edition of the newspaper, go through that, and tie it with the topic that's relevant for you in the exam, right? The moment you read a headline, figure out if it's relevant for the exam or not. If it's relevant, yes, you will spend time reading it. If it's not relevant, skip it, right? But after you read the article, try to summarize in your own words, or at least what I expect is once a week, just frame those questions by yourself. Some of them are also available on Oliveboard portal, but don't be restricted to what's available on the portal. Frame those questions, maybe about 4 of them, write your answers, send it to your Oliveboard mentor, get them evaluated, seek the necessary feedback for you to improve, right? This will provide a strong foundation for you when it comes to the descriptive. So you don't have to worry about it after phase 1 or the fact that you've not practiced enough, right? The idea is at least in the first month, you are able to do 4 full-length mock tests, which is roughly once a week, right? And topical test depends on, what area you think you need more practice on. Generally for QRE, my prescription will be that you pick up only the mock tests and see which areas now need more revision, more practice. If you're able to do well in the topical tests, then just continue doing that and go for full length mock test. General awareness obviously requires much more detailed preparation, right? Then when we look at phase 2, do the same thing. I would advise you start with management because management is completely static. Try to complete it in the first month. That is something which is quite doable. You can refer to Oliveboard's material. It's concise, it's crisp, it highlights all the relevant topics. Every subtopic that's mentioned in the syllabus, try to have a 200, 250 word answer ready for it, right? That is something that will be very useful after you complete phase 1 and you're looking at revision between phase 1 and phase 2. Because there will be definitely a few questions which are static in nature where these answers can be readily plugged in. Even if it is somewhat linked to current affairs, this static portion or the points, the fodder, the definitions, everything that you've maintained so far will help in providing a ready-made template for you, right? Next slide, please. Right. Second month, the idea is in QRE, at least you are able to identify those weak areas and then cover them. General awareness, as we discussed, will continue throughout. Again, take a mock test on a weekly basis, right? Now, I'll just explain for one section in terms of how you should look at what is a weak area, what's a strong area, right? So overall, out of 4 sections, if you want to clear phase 1, it means you should make 2 sections your areas of strength, and one of them has to be general awareness or reasoning. As you've already seen, they carry the highest weightages, right? The other where people usually are quite apprehensive, either because they've not done it in a long time or they're not sure about the speed, is quantitative aptitude. Now, whether it's this or whether it's reasoning, any of the other sections, even if you don't do that well and you're not that confident, at least make sure you're able to clear the sectional cutoff, right? How can you do that? For example, let's take Quant, right? Now you have 30 questions, you have 25 minutes. Trend has been that the questions are usually moderate difficulty level, right? Which means that you should aim for a score of about 10 right? In order to get 10, as I said, accuracy is high, needs to be high, which means that you're going to attempt about 11 questions, right? Maximum you get one wrong, so 9.75 is where you end up. I will suggest that make arithmetic your area of strength, where percentages, ratios, ages, everything to do with time, speed, and distance, all this can be covered using the same principle, right? As I said, there's a question in English converted into mathematical equation or two, depending on what problem you're solving. And each time you do this, right, understand how complexity gets added, right? Which means that let's look at a topic like time, speed, and distance, right? Nowhere the question is going to be that if you're traveling for 50 kilometers in 5 hours, what is your speed, right? They want you to arrive at the same answer, but they won't ask it in the same manner, right? How does complexity get added? Now, anyway, we understand that time is equal to speed into distance, correct? Yes. Is this the equation? Time is equal to speed into distance. Okay. I see one person responding. Right. So what should it be? Can you type if this is not right? Okay. Time is equal to distance upon speed, or distance is equal to, right? Right. So now that we understand this, right, the variations are going to be, instead of one object, you will have two objects, right? Two cars, two people running a race, one starting behind, one has a head start, right? Objects traveling in opposite directions. Now, you understand that if two objects are traveling in the same direction, the one who is behind, if they have to overtake the one who is ahead, they have to travel at a faster speed, right? If both of them travel at the same speed, then the distance between them will remain the same, right? Whereas when they're traveling in opposite directions, which means let's assume train, right? So trains come in opposite directions, they'll right, either pass by or they will collide. That means they're coming closer, which means you will add the relative speeds, right? This is all you need to know, and this is how the questions will be, right? But instead of, as I said, you'll have maybe a man in a train, man on a platform. You probably have boat traveling, upstream or downstream. These are all variations of the same thing, right? So make sure that foundation is strong, right? Once you do that, now how do you look at the question? How do you break it into these elements? How do you find out the unknown variables? These are things that will naturally take shape, right? If you are able to solve almost every question which is easy in nature, and good set of questions which are moderate in nature, then you're through, right? If you're able to solve even moderate and some difficult, then that's your area of strength where you need to maximize, right? So instead of that 9.5 that we were 9.75 that we were looking at earlier, maybe that can go as high as 15, 16, right? It's important that you choose your questions wisely, which means that when you go for the final exam, that's the intent of taking these mock tests, that you already know that these are my areas of strength. Everything I do there will what count towards my selection. So I'll attempt those questions first, right? One thing that's critical, because you have a time constraint, is do not waste or do not spend more than, say, 1.5 or 2 minutes on a standalone question, right? And if you're not able to solve in that time frame, just move on, right? If it's a set question, like you'll have in reasoning and a few in quant, if you're spending more than 5 minutes and you're no closer to solving that puzzle, again, move on. Preferably, do not attempt those questions at the beginning, but attempt them towards the end, right? Because if you attempt at the beginning and you're not able to solve, it adds to your pressure that you've spent a lot of time without making progress. So first solve the standalone questions, then move towards these set questions, okay? So for phase one, English, in English, you should not have a time constraint. 30 questions, 25 minutes is doable. General awareness, 80 questions, 25 minutes is also largely doable, but Some of those questions, especially related to government schemes, can be lengthy, which is where you need to apply discretion. You need to be quick in decision making in terms of, should I select this, should I not select this option? These are options I've eliminated. You're left with two options, pick one, move on, right? And as far as possible, minimize that guesswork in quant and reasoning that I mentioned earlier, right? This is how you should prepare for phase one. Along with this, phase two, as I said, management is completely static. Try to complete that in month one. Month two is where you can pick up finance. That usually takes about 2.5, 3 weeks. And then you can also do any static portion of ESI, which should take 2 weeks. So by the time you complete month two or maybe week one in month three, you are thorough with the static portion of both ESI and FNM. Anything that is current affairs for both finance, which is about 50% of it, and for ESI, that will continue till the end of phase two, as we discussed. Something that can help you understand the mind of the examiner is by looking at previous year questions and how you can answer both subjective as well as the objective portion, right? What kind of questions, what kind of schemes, how is it relevant to something that's appearing in newspapers today, right? So that's how you should look at it, right? In the sense that while the question itself may not be on a hot topic or on a scheme that's relevant today, there could have been a scheme that was launched maybe 10 years ago, right? And this is a better version. This has different objectives in terms of scale or in terms of coverage, but there's already a foundation where something has been attempted before, so you can take cues from that, right? So the way to do this is you create mind maps, right? When you look at a scheme that's announced today, right? For example, last year there's something called as PM Vishwakarma Yojana, right? For livelihood, and especially in certain traditional sector. So in that case, now what were the previous ones which were associated with it, right? What happened to them? Where did they again succeed? Where were they not that successful, right? How is this different? Which ministry is launching? Once you do that, then it becomes easier to look at everything in the context of what are the improvements that have been made, what are the improvements that can further be made, right? And especially when it comes to government schemes, make sure you have a clear table that says, okay, which ministry, what is the budget, who are the beneficiaries, when was it announced, what is the budget outlay, right? Where is it going to be launched? Is it pan-India? Is it going to be in select states and select districts? What are the criteria to decide who are the beneficiaries? What is the split of share between center and state in terms of the expenditure, right? So that's how you should create a neat table, and you can maintain probably a Google Sheet where you can list all the important schemes, right? Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so month three becomes critical because you are going to be doing a lot of revision. Hopefully do less of study during that time, do more of revision and do more of practice. Make sure you do full-length mock tests in a sincere manner, which means you're not distracted by it and you're spending the full 2 hours on the mock test. And after you take every mock test, analyze your performance, which means that if you're taking a test for, let's assume a full-length mock test for 2 hours, spend at least 2 hours looking at, okay, these are the questions I attempted. This is what I got right. This is what I did not get right. Why did I lose out on right those questions? Where did I err? Which are the questions I did not attempt, but maybe because of time, maybe because I didn't get the question, maybe because I attempted, I tried solving it, but halfway I lost it. What can you do differently now, given that you've seen the solution, or you are not in that mode where you've probably forgotten something in the heat of the exam, right? So this becomes critical, but make sure that once you take a test, you are also able to analyze it and understand where the shortcomings are, right? This is non-negotiable. Again, like we discussed, current affairs, you do daily, weekly, monthly revision. Every mock test you do should also be followed by that analysis, right? That will help you a long way in understanding, again, which questions you should pick and which questions you shouldn't pick, right? Coming to phase two, look at specific areas, usually the ones that are important are reports by developmental agencies, new circulars by RBI, government schemes that are announced, right? All of these, right? Next slide, please. Yeah, you have additional time. Again, as I said, nobody has a crystal ball where one can gaze and identify that these are the right exact dates on which the exam is going to be conducted, both phase one, phase two. Any additional time you have, keep revising current affairs. Usually 6 months is the time frame we suggest, 6 months before the exam, where you need to be thorough with the current affairs. The more obviously the better, but 6 months should ensure you're able to cover at least 80-85% of the questions that come in the exam. Next slide, please. Right. Look at trend over last few years. Now, there are several factors that affect the trends, but one, as I said, is from the year time limits were introduced, you've seen the cutoffs fall. They've stayed in a narrow range, right? But what you can notice is even between 23 and 24, it jumped significantly. That's almost 25%. That's because of different factors, but primarily also to do with number of vacancies, which is also not in your control. So don't worry about it. So while the difficulty level seems to increase a bit, and as I said, clear signs of it in general awareness, social schemes, government schemes, all of that. Preparation helps in clearing out whatever is not relevant, and in still maintaining a decent score, right? So general awareness is where you should be able to get, if you prepare well and you revise well, you should be able to get 40 out of 80. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is a consistent trend where you see what I said earlier, last 6 months, you do that current affairs and you're going to cover about 85% of it. In fact, in some years, it's been higher than that, the proportion, but current affairs is what you should focus on. Static GK, do not worry a lot about it. As long as you're thorough with current affairs, you will also learn some amount of static GK, but just having a comprehensive, right, understanding of what's happened, which are the events, what should I track, what kind of questions, will mean you will be able to attempt at least 60, 65 questions out of 80, and you will score more than 35, 40. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think we've discussed this enough in terms of what the important areas are. This is something that Oliveboard will be covering throughout, both in the PDFs and lectures. So continue to do that. But broadly, you will have a lot of these events, milestones, landmarks related questions, which may not translate, but everything else from current affairs, especially ESI current affairs, schemes, finance, GDP numbers, something like that, will continue for phase one, for phase two as well. So both in phase one and phase two. But everything that you read, especially when it comes to current affairs, also look at the angle in which it can be asked either as an objective question or as a descriptive question in phase two. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is, again, this is going to be a bit subjective, what is easy, what is moderate, but you will see that in any case, you have easy plus moderate contributing at least 70% of the questions. So that should make you feel a lot better. I know there are a lot of questions already on the chat box in terms of how the difficulty level is going to be or what kind of preparation, because the syllabus is vast. We've covered all this. So that should give you comfort that if you're able to be thorough with last 6 months, focus on schemes, on economic and social issues, indicators, on certain reports and key statistics, you should be able to answer a lot of these questions. Next slide, please. Yeah, questions about which newspaper, again, it's your personal preference, doesn't really matter. Just make sure you're thorough with last 6 months. Oliveboard has a monthly PDF magazine. So make you go through that, look at what kind of questions were asked in the previous years. Of course, help is readily available. Make sure you seek that and you benefit from it in your overall preparation. And especially if you feel that you're constrained for time. Next slide, please. Yeah, PIB becomes an important source, but again, the idea is not that you will go to PIB website every day, scan for relevant news, all of that. You can take Oliveboard's help. This happens every day. You can tune into that, and that will help you again fast track your preparation. Right. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think this is something we covered, but let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, last 6 months is the key. Limit your sources. This has been mentioned, I think, 5 times now, but move on. Yeah, so there's also new batch that's ongoing. You can tune into that, not just for general awareness, but for other aspects of the exam as well. But make sure you get enough practice. Don't just think that by signing up or by tuning into the classes, your job is done. They'll help set the foundation and they'll help provide that necessary direction. But you have to do the heavy lifting when it comes to revising or taking mock tests. Next slide, please. Okay, this is what I was talking about initially. Right now, you can see that the overall cutoff out of 350 has been around 225, 230 from 2022. Phase 2 cutoff has hovered around the 170 mark, which is roughly about 57%. And you can also appreciate the fact that you need to do quite well in phase 2 if you want to stand a good chance at clearing the overall cutoff, because the delta is going to be quite high, irrespective of which year you look at it. If you barely clear phase 2 cutoff, then it means you have to do extraordinarily well in the interview, right? So having a buffer of 10 to 15 marks is important, which means that you should ideally look for a score of around 200 in phase 2. The way to look at it is that if you're able to score 70 in ESI and FNM and about 60 plus in English, that'll help you, have that buffer of 20 marks or so on, which can offset an interview that where the score or performance is not that high. Next slide, please. Yeah, so broadly in ESI, these are the 5 sections you can think of, right? Now, no matter which section it is, the template remains the same. Look at what are the major developments, look at some static portion in terms of definitions, look at some indices that can contribute towards these or that indicate a certain level of progress, a certain level of growth, right? Look at all the efforts that have gone in to improve the, right, state of affairs where we know that we have to work on a lot. Look at now contrast this with any reports that have been published by whether it's a national agency or an international agency, right? Whether it's the IMF, World Bank, whether it's any of the UN organizations, right? Next slide, please. Objective, again, if you see a lot of it hinges on government schemes, reports, to make sure you are able to do that. ESI static has not featured a lot. Can we move to the subsequent years? Next slide, please. Yeah. So government schemes are obviously important to focus on that. Focus on that for 2 reasons, not just for objective for phase 1 or phase 2, but also for the descriptive portion. Important ministries are something that we've highlighted on this slide, right? So you can probably take a ministry-wise approach that, okay, what is the function of this ministry? What are the schemes they've launched? Which are the schemes that are running? Which are the flagship schemes and all of that? Next slide, please. Right. So I think descriptive we've already covered in terms of how your preparation should be, but I'll just elaborate on this for a minute. What you should try to focus on is not just the facts and figures, right, but presenting in a manner that appeals to the examiner and gives that impression that you are a person who has a good understanding, is also able to synthesize it well, is able to articulate it well. right? So what I mean is, for example, there's a question you are expected to write, let's say 10-mark question is expected to write about 250 words. Um, do it in 3 paragraphs. The style is obviously important. There should be an introduction, there should be body, there should be conclusion. Now, introduction is where you will typically link it to whatever is happening in current affairs, link it to a scheme that's announced, link it to some historical context, right? Any of these. Body is the main part where you can use a bullet point format, you can use a paragraph format, but if you're using a paragraph format, then make it in 3 paragraphs, right? Where you should take a stance if there is a question that makes you take a stance, is asked you, is this the right way to do it, or what should be done about it, then you should clearly articulate your stance that this is good, this is not good, and you should provide explanation, right? This is where newspaper helps you immensely. It just won't tell you that this is right or this is not right, but it'll also tell you the reason for it, right? Here is why I think this is right. Here is why I think this is not right. And build on it using examples, right? Examples, data, everything that you can pull from the newspaper, right? So this is something that is critical. So I would suggest that you spend at least 45 minutes on a daily basis on reading newspaper, because there'll be about 2 to 3 articles that are relevant for the exam, right? But most important, even when you write these answers, you should get them evaluated, you should get that feedback, and that's how you're going to improve. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is a good way to understand how that progression will happen, how you will gain confidence along it, how you will gain substance, and how you'll also improve your presentation, right? So use Oliveboard material, use newspapers, now create your notes, right? Take mock tests, revise them, and improve your answer writing, right? But this is how it should ideally flow, right? Now, even just by reading the newspaper or by looking at current affairs, you'll already come across various concepts or definitions, right? How is this treated? How is that treated? How do you define CPI? What weightages do you give to which, right, in that basket of goods, to which articles, and so on. Next slide, please. Right. Moving to F&M, I think we've already discussed this. Management is largely going to be static. Finance is going to be mix of both static and dynamic. But that's how you should look at it in terms of, even between finance and economics, there could be some overlap in terms of, especially when it comes to some data indicators. But having that holistic view will ensure you cover both. Next slide, please. Yeah. A lot of times, while management is static, the problem students end up facing with is, again, the source and the syllabus, which is vast. So there are some low-hanging fruits which you can pick up, right? Management theories, application of management theories, right? These are two which will have both questions in objective and subjective portion. So having, again, maybe a clear table of, okay, what is the theory, who propounded it, what are the salient features, what are the criticisms around it. Just a neat table summarizing it will ensure that you have enough context for attempting those questions, right? RBI circulars and reports, of course, in different forms it will come. There could be somewhat tricky questions like we've seen, not necessarily in objective, but in subjective last year, like 81 bonds and stuff like that. If you think there's a googly or there's a question that you are not that confident about, you can skip that. Please remember that you have choice. You need to attempt only 2 out of the 3 questions that are asked. So you do have the choice. So you should exercise that wisely, right? Which is where it's possible that, especially in something like finance, there could be a question that's a little technical that requires in-depth knowledge. And if you don't possess, that's okay. It's also important to remember that if you are finding something difficult, most others will, right? So there's nothing to fret over it. Next slide, please. Yeah, we discussed this. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, finance. Yeah. So I think this is going to be this is something we covered even in terms of how you should approach ministries and stuff. Is the same who, what, why, when, where. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, the template is going to remain the same. Practice as much as you can. Get them evaluated. Look at the feedback. Look at what you are able to do well. Look at where you need to improve, and then plug those gaps. Next slide. Okay. It's important to get yourself acquainted with the format. So make sure you are able to, do that simulation at home. You type in those answers. Any adjustment that you need to make from physical, writing to typing on a system. You are able to do that, and that doesn't hamper you during the day of the exam. Broadly for phase two, time constraint should not really be meaningful. There is enough time for both the objective and subjective questions, but don't get perturbed by these little things. And therefore, just to get into that mold, you can start typing and you can gauge your typing speed, have a word limit. But most important, as I said, is structure. So even when you have, let's say, a 10-mark question, you can take about 15 to 18 minutes. So spend at least 1 or 2 minutes in putting out that structure, right? This is what I should cover in introduction. This is what I should cover in the body. This is what I should cover in the conclusion and stuff, right? Next slide, please. Yeah, again, there's, as I said, you can log on to the portal. There's a lot of stuff available, both on objective, descriptive side. Many tests that you can take in order to, be more confident, bring about that awareness, look at ways in which questions can be asked and what kind of answers can be provided. Next slide, please. Yeah, methodical approach to FM. This is similar to what we covered in ESI. Let's skip. Okay. So just to recap in terms of how we should look at next 3 months, as we discussed, and we'll probably give you a template of how you can, slot in any of these. But and again, we are looking at even people who are working and who do not probably have a lot of time on a daily basis. But as I said, if you're able to consistently do 3 to 4 hours in a day, that should be sufficient. Anything that you're not able to do on weekdays, you can compensate by working harder on weekends. Right. So this is a template. Again, look at what your strengths are, what your areas of improvement are, and you can modify it accordingly. Next slide, please. So this is how it will look like, right? And of course, to all the participants, we'll send out timetable over email. But for example, in the first week, how should you look at it, right? You should start with basics of economics, right? Now pair it with, as we said, this is something related to phase two. Pair it with something related to phase one, which is quant. And you can look at perhaps something like the number system. But these are all, so while it's divided in this manner, if you feel you're confident about certain things, then you can skip. And if you feel something else which here does not feature in an intense manner, you can add the required time or required amount of preparation for it, right? But the idea is if you are able to do a fair bit of progress over first 2-3 days, then you can start taking a mock test, right? You can at least take topical test there, right? As I said, at least for QRE, start taking sectional tests, and where you feel you need to spend more efforts, then only for those you take the topical tests, right? But make sure that you do both simultaneously and you're not leaving anything towards the end, whether it's phase one or phase two. Current affairs has to go on in a rigorous manner on a daily basis. It doesn't take a lot of time, maybe about 15 minutes a day, where You take about 10 minutes to read the current days, and then you take 5 minutes for revising the previous days, right? So thank you for tuning in. I think we're almost at the end of it. So if there are specific questions that have not been addressed during the course of the webinar, I can take them up. And of course, we still have those exciting giveaways. So I'll take up. So you can read about this, but this is something that from the last year's mentorship program. We have a candidate who's All India rank 8, right? And these are some of the testimonials, especially in terms of how do you structure, how do you do course correction when you realize that certain things are not going well, how do you tweak your preparation in order to maximize for phase 1, phase 2, all the things that we discussed over the last 45 minutes that's covered here in terms of, again, how should you make notes, how should you attempt objective questions, how should you attempt subjective questions, all of these. Right. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the Oliveboard also has a complete course. You can enroll for that. You can get the maximum out of it by joining in today, by tuning into all the live classes, by getting all the relevant material for the exam, and also by taking mock tests. Getting that, as I said, when you do a mock test, whether it's objective or subjective, getting that evaluation, getting that feedback is critical. So don't miss out on that step, right? We also have exciting giveaways, but let me quickly take a few questions that have been asked during the course of the webinar. And there's also another exciting offer from Oliveboard on where you can use the course for not just RBI, for other regulatory exams, right? Even the All India Rank 1 this year had used Oliveboard material and YouTube videos for his preparation, and he found it extremely valuable. So you can also use the current promotional offer for enrolling into these courses. But having said that, let's move on quickly to some of the questions. So I think this is a pertinent question in terms of not having confidence while solving problems. And this happens often with students. So look at where you are going wrong, in the sense, is it a conceptual understanding issue that needs to be fixed, or is it more to do with now the mathematical operation part that I mentioned earlier, right? So the way to get better at understanding what you are good at or what you're not good at is by looking at, so if you've solved questions from different topics, now just go topic by topic, even topic by topic, divide it into different aspects, right? In the sense that if there's a question on, let's say, like we discussed, say time, speed, and distance, right? Now break it down into, okay, can I solve general problem? Okay, can I solve those boat problem? Can I solve man and train problem? Where am I getting stuck at, right? What is it that I can do in order to fix that? And what is it that I can answer confidently, right? Anytime you're taking a mock test, your approach should be that you should start from strength, from a place of strength or from place of confidence, which means you will attempt questions that you are good at, and you will pick up other questions later, right? That will also build a lot of confidence during the exam, right? Not being attentive enough while doing those mathematical operations can also be a reason for getting negative marks or for going wrong when you know things, when you know how to solve it. So that's something that you should take care of, and that's something that you should absolutely avoid, right? Any of those silly mistakes where you are able to form the equations, you are able to put them together, but the numbers weren't showing up accurately because you made some silly mistakes. So that's another thing that can pull your confidence down. So break it down piece by piece, right? So this is where I'm going wrong. This is where I'm losing confidence. This is what I need to fix, right? We have a few other questions, especially on working aspirants, whether it's in banks or other areas, right? We often don't get fixed time. That's true. But as I said, have a window where, for example, you know that before 8, you don't start from home. Try to wake up by 5 so you can slot in an hour or hour and a half. My prescription is no matter how busy you are during that 24-hour period, identify at least a 1.5 hour slot where things don't change. Because for your brain to get attuned and for you to retain a lot of it, having slots of 15-20 minutes won't work. So make sure you have a slot of at least 1.5 hours where you are able to get enough time to look at these topics, whether it's solving a test, whether it's reading about things, or whether it's revising. Right. Some of the other things I generally like to do is when I'm reading stuff, I try to record it in my own voice. When I'm commuting, when I'm taking a break, when I'm doing any of those things, then I can listen to those notes I've made for myself. Right. That's another way you can improve, the revision part and the retention part. But please do not substitute it for any formal preparation. Right. Whatever I've said just now, that has to be outside the 3-hour window that I described. It can't be part of. If you can't keep watching YouTube videos for 3 hours or listening to some whether it's your own notes or whether it's somebody else's voice, that doesn't help, right? The idea is you focus on your own preparation as far as possible, right? Even if you are taking those Oliveboard classes, make sure you again summarize it in your own words. You try to write it down, right? You try to take a mock test after that. So that signifies a level of higher involvement, and that usually leads to higher retention as well, right? There are other questions that have not been answered. I guess we've answered quite a few during the course of the webinar itself. I know a lot of students have also mentioned issues with Quant or that they find it difficult. Now, again, Quant as a whole, finding it difficult is a generic statement. Break it down as far as possible. Okay, is it arithmetic? Is it algebra? Is it permutations, combinations? In arithmetic, is it related to percentages? Is it related to simple interest, compound interest? Is it related to ratios? Where is it, right? The deeper you go or the more granular you go, that's how you'll get better at, okay, this is something I understand, this is something I don't understand. But fundamentally, as I illustrated during the webinar, all you need to know is one thing, right? Whether it's, like I said, in time, speed, and distance, distance is equal to speed into time. If you know that, you know the topic. Now, from that, think of how variations can occur. Think of how different kinds of problems can be put in the examination that you can answer, having this knowledge that there is one equation, there are, right, 3 variables, 2 known, 1 unknown. This is how I need to solve for it, right? Last question on specific books or resources for phase 2. I'm usually not a fan of books because they are extensive. The syllabus is quite vast and it will take a long time. And this definitely is not the right time to start indulging in reading books. So my suggestion would be to stick to Oliveboard material for phase 2 as well. Phase 1, phase 2, current affairs, every bit of your preparation, right? So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We have exciting giveaways. So in fact, this time we have 3 giveaways. One is the study plan, that 90-day study plan we spoke about. So that's something that we will share. Last 5 years of previous year questions, something that we consolidated and we will share. Biggest of them, and this is going to be quite useful for you, is we've also consolidated handwritten notes for 50 topics, which will cover both static and current affairs. And I saw one question earlier also, like for essay, can you suggest a few topics? So all that is part of that handwritten notes by All India Rank 1 this year. So that is something that Oliveboard has consolidated and is sharing it with you, right? So make the best use of it. Again, when you look at these notes, when you look at the previous year question papers, they should be a way for you to think, right? Okay, I have this understanding. Now, how do I develop that understanding, or how do I even frame it in my own way? How do I describe it in my own way, right? So that will make the difference, because how unique your answer is, whether it's the interview, whether it's in descriptive phase 2. That will help you score higher than others, right? Remember that it's a competitive exam and you have to show your distinct mark as well. The foundation will remain the same for everyone, but how you make use of that foundation and how you are able to solve faster, how you are able to solve more accurately, how you're able to present better. This is what will determine your selection. But please remember that help is always at hand. Make sure you get the most out of it through either the specific modules that we spoke about or the comprehensive course that can help you reach your destination. But thank you so much for joining, and hope this was useful. All the best. Even if you're starting today, if you're a working professional, if you've attempted earlier, do not carry all that baggage. Be confident on what you're doing. Have earmarked time slots. As I said, don't look at 6-7 hours every day. If it's 2 or 3 hours that you can take out consistently, that matters more. This exam is about consistency, to make sure that you do the things religiously that we've spoken about. That will ensure your success. Thank you.